As I prepared to offer some words today, I decided to go back to May of 2018 when we were in the great nave of the Riverside Church just up the road a bit from here. And I came back to a service that many of us attended, back when funerals could gather us all. And I listened to the reflections that shared all of the doors that Dr. James Hal Cone opened for those who were blessed enough to have the opportunity to study with him. And Dr. Cone has, by the way, been in the news of late, under attack for, as it were, questioning the appropriate power of whiteness. And Dr. Cone, who founded the discipline of Black liberation theology, the very basis of theological, biblical, and Christian ethical disciplines, which this congregation follows, by the way, is being cast as a pariah, a liability, a problem indeed, the source of a legacy that they're claiming must be disavowed. And these attacks aren't novel, and they're not unoriginal either. They're almost boring in their predictability, honestly, and their repetitiveness. And they remind us of the very kinds of attacks that we saw on our prophetic brother, Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, and also so many others from a liberationist theological interpretation whose teachings challenge, everything we know about power, might, and what's right. And as I listened to the people whom Dr. Cone wisely had handpicked to send him home, I heard stories of people who grew up with a love of God, but a struggle with church. They couldn't understand how to square what church did with what God promised and said. And they couldn't square their being with so much of the church's teaching. And James Cone's teaching actually changed all of this for them. But as his eulogizer said, in quoting the story of the biblical prophet Amos, the land is not able to abide his words, which got me thinking, whose words will the land abide in these days? Whose words abide the strength of the airways? Whose words get heard while other words are ignored? Whose words, however inane, carry the power of repetition again and again in our ears, while others' words carry the power of the cross and the lynching tree? Whose words will we abide? And as we delve into today's text from Paul's first letter to the church in Thessalonica, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Thessalonica, I can't help but to wonder if Paul wasn't wondering the same. Adelphoi, he says. Adelphoi, that's the Greek for brethren or sistren, or as I'm going to say, kindred. Adelphoi, you already know. You know the truth. You know what time it is. You know what God has done. And maybe you were going to keep it to yourself. But God's been so good that you got to tell somebody. You got to testify. You have to testify, because when you think about the goodness of the Lord, you can't keep quiet. You know, kindred, Adelphoi. You know the goodness God has done in your life, but there are those. They're the ones who are out there that are going to try to tell you differently. Try to tell you up is down and down is up and hot is cold and dozens are millions and lies are truth. You will stand in your truth, your God-given sanctified truth, and the forces will attempt to enshroud you and cover you up so you can't even see anymore. Roll back the clock so much that 2 p.m. feels like midnight, again and again. They don't want you living in the day, children of the day. No, they want you to be a creature of perpetual night, unable to see, so they can drag you by a leash around your throat they'll pretend isn't even there. Folks, they want us living under the night shroud. But is that what Jesus wants? I tell you what, these days in a new way. I read the Bible and the points of focus for the prophets and the apostles, and especially Jesus. And it all has a new meaning to me that I had never seen before. And the warnings just feel so close and so present. Why? Because the playbook is tired. And so are the people. Paul knew this. And when he wrote to his friends who might have been struggling, he didn't chastise them for their weaknesses. Instead, he helped them. He showed them that while the forces against them would prefer them under the straitjacket of nighttime, vulnerable to assaults that we can't see coming, God has already protected them. Jesus is already protecting you. Children of the day are awake. Children of the day are protected by a breastplate of faith and love. Children of the day bear the helmet of both hope and salvation, both together. And Paul points this out to his friends. Their destiny, your destiny, was never wrath. Instead, you are meant to be. You're meant to be. And thanks to be to God, you are saved. Because whether awake or asleep, the truth is that the power of the cross is this. No matter what kind of shroud they may want to put over your truth, the power of the cross will shine through. There's no blockage they or you can ever erect that could stop Christ from getting through. You bear the breastplate and the helmet and the power and the shield. And I'll admit this imagery seems to be queuing us up for some kind of violence. Or we can look at it this way. God knows the violence all around us and is saying that no matter what they try, God's might is stronger. No matter whose peace they value while others' torture becomes fair game, God's justice is fairer. And then, when you look on the goodness of the Lord and all that God has done for you with this breastplate and this helmet of protection and that crown of glory, you're going to have to tell somebody. You'll have to say, I'm here, not to tear you down, but to build us all up. And when the parousia comes, the day of the Lord, we awaken again. And we tell the truth and we make it plain. And that truth is that we are indeed our kindred's keepers. We are responsible for each other. We can never be stagnant. We can't let our pride or ambition colonize our faith. We have to move from the cross and then past the lynching tree so that there are no more lynchings. You know what time it is. So let's move. Amen.